A short time ago, I spoke to South Dakota Republican Senator John Thune. He's the chair of the Senate Republican Policy Committee, and I asked him about the president's call for more spending. Please take a listen. Mr. Thune, let me ask you something. From what we know of the State of the Union message, we haven't seen it yet from what we know, there is going to be a call by the president for more spending across the board, education, infrastructure, energy, and so forth. He is calling it government investment. I want to ask you what you think about that. Well,
I think the American people know that that's code for more spending, and there was a rejection of that, just a unilateral rejection of that from the American people on Election Day. People are frustrated with the amount of spending in Washington, and whether or not the president designates it for this or for that and calls it investment, it is what it is. And when you're running a $14.3 trillion debt and adding $1 trillion to it or more every single year, it's time that we started not increasing spending but reducing spending. And I think that's going to present a very clear contrast between our message and theirs.
Is there going to be a conflict? Is there going to be an early fiscal year confrontation between the Republicans and the president and the Democrats over this issue? And I want to add, from what we gather, Mr. Obama's budget is not likely to be near as tough for deficit cutting or spending cutting than his own Erskine Bowles Al Simpson commission.
Right.
Is there going to be a confrontation, a conflict right away?
Well, I think there will, and there are several windows where that could happen. There's going to be a continuing resolution that expires in early March, and that'll set up a debate about spending and how do we can fund the government, you know, beyond the March 4th deadline. The debt limit will be hit sometime in that March to May time frame, and that's going to create a debate about debt. So I think that there will be, and I think you'll see the House Budget Committee, as they start to write their budget resolution, incorporate many of the recommendations of the Debt Commission, which propose some fairly steep reductions in non-national security discretionary spending.
In a sense, is that Bowles-Simpson going to be kind of a baseline for this whole debate?
I think it gave a tremendous amount of momentum for that, because you had both Democrats and Republicans and some very conservative Republicans saying these are things that we could get behind. And so I think that did frame the issue. It did it slightly different than what some of us have advocated. I've advocated going back to the 2008 levels. It's talking about in 2012 basically freezing and then allowing for, I think, a 0.5% increase annually. Either way, these are proposals that are going to call for some pretty aggressive cutting of federal spending. And I think that's we have to go there, Larry. We cannot afford. We don't have the luxury of time in this circumstance because of where we are and in the debt that continues to pile up and what that means for the future of this economy.
What's the outlook for the corporate tax cut? Now, we are told today, Austin Goolsbee, the president's chief economist, that the president is considering a corporate tax cut, but there's also going to be all kinds of details about what tax credits and tax deductions are eliminated and whether there's going to be industrial planning and targeting and so forth. What can you tell us about the corporate tax cut?
Well, I think that I would like to see the president come out and embrace that idea, because we are not competitive with many of the countries around the world that we need to be competitive with. And the corporate tax rate being the highest in the world, or at least in the developed world, is something that's a real deterrent to attracting, making this an attractive place to do business. So I think that's something we could work with the president on, and I would add to that a lot of trade agreements, which have been stuck here now for 2 or 3 years, Colombia, Panama, South Korea, all of which would increase exports, create jobs, and help grow the economy.
One country that is breaking trade agreements left and right is China.
Right.
The red arrogant China. What's your take on the Chinese trade situation, and do you think President Obama was tough enough when Hu Jintao was here in Washington?
We've tried diplomacy, we've tried jawboning and all those sorts of things, and I would like to have seen him taken a tougher line with China, simply because if they want to be a player on the world stage, they ought to play by the same rules everyone else does, and they don't. I mean, they manipulate their currency, they're an export-driven economy, and because they do that, it gives them an advantage relative to other countries around the world with whom we do business, and certainly gives them an advantage relative to our economy here. So I think that is an issue, China and its growth, which was about 10% last year, and the fact that they hold so much of our American debt, that's an issue that's not going to go away, and we need to take a tough line.
And a tough line on China.
Yeah, absolutely.
And finally, the great mentioner in the sky always has Senator John Thune on the potential presidential candidates list. We're early in 2011. Is the door open for you? What are you thinking about?
Well, I haven't made any final decisions about that. Obviously, I've been doing diligence like other potential candidates have been as you look at this. And I think there is an opportunity and an opening out there, but at the same time, it's certainly a daunting undertaking when you think about what it takes. So the real issue is there something that the country needs that you think you can contribute to and perhaps do it in a different way than some of the other candidates that are out there?
Is there a pet John Thune issue that you want to raise and get on the presidential agenda in the Republican Party?
I think that, sort of restoring a belief in American exceptionalism, moving back to some of those core principles and values that have helped shape this country and make it strong. Ronald Reagan once said there are no easy answers, but there are simple answers, and I think that's really true. And I think Midwestern common sense would be in great need and great demand around here. And learning to live within your means, there are just a lot of sort of basic principles that we've gotten away from, and we need to get back to them.
All right, many thanks to Senator John Thune. By the way, I loved his message on American exceptionalism.